I'd like to call this Monday, November 26th meeting of the City Commission to order and ask those who wish to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, has roll been taken this evening?
It has. All are present tonight.
Great, thank you. Proclamations and presentations, we have one item. We have one new staff member and a promotion. So Christy, would you like to come up and introduce Carrie for us?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I would like to introduce Carrie Bryant. Carrie is the newest records professional for the City of Mount Pleasant and recently joined the Department of Public Safety staff as a records professional 1. Carrie comes to us from the Mount Pleasant Public Schools, where she was a building secretary at Fancher Elementary. She provided support for the administration, teachers, parents, and students. Carrie also owned and operated Miss Carrie's Confections, where she created custom cakes, cookies, and cupcakes.
Ooh.
Carrie is a 1995 graduate of Swartz Creek High School, and she moved to Mount Pleasant as a student. She earned a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Central Michigan University. Along with her husband, Alan, she has raised 4 children in Mount Pleasant. The youngest of them is an 8th grader at Mount Pleasant Public Schools. We are very excited that Carrie has joined our department and will be part of the city's team. Please join me as we welcome Carrie to our staff and wish her much success.
Thank you so much. I'm sure the guys will enjoy your baking if you choose to make any treats for them. So. Oh, good.
And so would the City Commission, Carrie.
She's been spoiling us already.
All right.
Great.
Welcome. And also over in the Public Safety Building, we have a exciting promotion. Chief Beltnick.
Good evening. My name is Rick Beltnick. I'm the Fire Chief for the City of Mount Pleasant, and we're here tonight to introduce our newly promoted Assistant Fire Chief, Doug Lobzinger. Doug was born and raised in Mount Pleasant. He has 25 years of service with the City of Mount Pleasant Fire Department. Doug started his career as a paid-on-call firefighter in 1993, and for the past 3 years, he has served in the sergeant position. Doug has an associate's degree in fire science from Mid-Michigan Community College. Doug has 2 adult daughters and lives in Mount Pleasant with his wife, Susan. Doug has a passion for public service and helping others. As Assistant Fire Chief, he will be responsible for the Neighborhood Resource Unit, code enforcement, and will be a vital member of the Fire Department administrative team. Congratulations, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. All right. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening from commissioners or staff? Seeing none, I will open up the opportunity for public input on agenda items. This evening we have 2 opportunities for public input. This is the first opportunity where you are welcome to come up and give up to 5 minutes of comment on anything on the agenda. We also have an opportunity for input at the very end of our agenda for anything city related. We ask that you state your name and address before you begin your public comment, and there are quite a few people here this evening that may be giving public comment, so to speed the process along, if you wanted to make a line behind the podium, we would welcome that. So I will open this opportunity for public comment now.
Good evening. My name is Joyce Baugh. I live at 711 Hopkins Street here in Mount Pleasant. I'm here to speak in favor of the proposal to create a Citizens Advisory Board, and I urge commissioners to pass this proposal tonight. At the commission meeting 2 weeks ago, one of the commissioners stated that the proposal appeared to be a solution in search of a problem. I can assure you that this is not the case. As a CMU faculty member for nearly 30 years before retiring last year, countless numbers of students told me about their negative encounters with law enforcement officers in this community, including members of the Mount Pleasant Police Department. While most of these were students of color, I also heard from some of my white students who shared stories about the differential treatment that they observed when they were with students of color, rather than simply being by themselves or with other white students. As Ms. Ridley has noted, the small number of official complaints does not mean that there is not a problem. In my experience, many students have not filed formal complaints for two reasons. Number one, a fear of retaliation, and number two, a belief that the complaints would not be addressed in any meaningful way. On behalf of the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group, Drs. Joyce Henricks, Robert Newby, and I met twice with Chief Loria, Ms. Ridley, and members of the City Commission about this proposal. We acted in good faith, negotiating over several drafts to arrive at this point. In fact, after the commission meeting just 2 weeks ago, our group accepted additional suggestions from city officials in producing the proposal that is currently before you. In closing, I implore you to pass this proposal tonight, recognizing that it is a solid first step for improving police-community relations and for creating transparency. In our view, delaying action right now amounts to a rejection of these efforts. And I also was asked by Dr. Henricks to read a statement on her behalf. She is under the weather this evening. My name is Joyce Henricks. I live at 1005 Glen Avenue, Mount Pleasant. It was disappointing to learn about the new proposal that is being considered. I do not understand what happened since the last meeting when the commission agreed to put the proposal for a Citizens Advisory Board on the agenda. We have a chance to join other cities in our state and in the country to show that we take seriously the importance of providing transparency in the activities of the police department. No other agency in our city does that. We want to vote on the Citizens Advisory Board. We take not voting on a proposal as a rejection of it. Thanks for your time.
Hi, to the City Commission, to the people, and to the staff. My name is Jim Marino from 316 South Arnold. I'm here tonight because I hear there's been a process on this body that's going to be formed. I just want to give a little history. I was pretty active in the diversity group quite a while ago, pretty much since its beginning, a little later than that. But I remember that we used to work on issues in the high school, like strip searches, stuff like that, and we worked very closely with DPS head William Yeagley, and he used to attend the meetings quite frequently, and we conferred and were consulted about efforts to stop some of the disturbing things that were going on in the high school. So we have a long history of trying to address these issues. The next step we were going to take was right around 9/11, when the Department of Homeland Security was created and so forth. And right at that, before that time, we were going to take on police profiling, which is something that was discussed by the previous speaker, Dr. Bao. And we just stopped because at that time you couldn't really get anything like that discussed, people were so afraid, and there was kind of an overboard reaction to one way or another. So I just wanted to say that because these things take so long, but they really don't have to take so long. If people are brave, we can see there's nooses, you know, going up in different parts of the country. There's white supremacist Nazi flyers on the campus. There's horrible things written on the doors. I just can't believe that things are so bad after all the struggles of all the social justice warriors and people that try to make Mount Pleasant and this country a better place. Tear gassing little kids and hurting people, breaking the law, legalized kidnapping. So I hope that you in Mount Pleasant and on your commission here will take a good step, like was mentioned before, a good first step towards addressing some of these disturbing, disillusioning, and very disappointing things that are happening today in our country and in our name. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Gonzalez, and I live at 1206 East High Street. And I am here as an at-large member of the Human Rights Committee for Isabella County. I'm here to read a letter on behalf of the entire Human Rights Committee. The letter is signed by Maureen Ecke, chair of our Isabella County Human Rights Committee. To those it may concern, and I believe she submitted this to one of your members earlier, but it wouldn't have been included in your packet, I don't believe. So I don't know if you have it or not. I write as the chair of the Isabella County Human Rights Committee to confirm the committee's support of the proposed formation of a Citizens Advisory Board. Although some of the delineated tasks of the Citizens Advisory Board overlap with a few of the responsibilities of the HRC, Human Rights Committee, we believe, however, that the overlap should not deter the formation of the Citizens Advisory Board. We also believe that the CAB will enhance the work of the HRC by providing residents more transparency about the city police and its processes for handling complaints. We look forward to working with the CAB and the city to make our community an inclusive and welcoming community for all. Should you have questions, please do not hesitate to contact the Isabella County Human Rights Committee. Thank you. Sincerely, Maureen Ecke, Chair, Isabella County, HRC. And then her phone number is 989-513-5736. I do also want to state that I am a member of the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group too, so for transparency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alexandra Ulana Clemission, and I reside at 420 South Pine Street in Mount Pleasant. As chair of the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group, I affirm that we fully support the revised proposal for the Citizen Advisory Board contained in tonight's commission packet. The minor revisions were the result of requests for clarification that we received through commissioners since the last meeting, and we urge the passage of this proposal tonight. I also would like to reassure members of the City Commission that there is no duplication between the proposed Citizen Advisory Board and the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group. Most importantly, MPADG is a community group with no official standing. The group was established in the early 1990s by members of parents of color and others who were, and continue to be, concerned about the treatment of members of underrepresented groups in the public schools and in the community at large. Our goal continues to be the improvement of intergroup relations, especially those based on racial differences. Over the years, our activities have varied, but have been mainly educational. Most recently, the group has sponsored presentations on immigration issues and presentations to teacher education students at CMU with examples of study plans on discrimination. On a few occasions, the group has been asked either for advice or for actual intervention on behalf of a member of our community who felt discriminated against. All we could do was advocate on behalf of this person. The Citizen Advisory Board would focus specifically on incidents related to law enforcement in Mount Pleasant. The board would gather information on current procedures for filing complaints, for investigating them, and for resolving them. And at the end of the year, the group would issue a report and recommendations as needed for further actions. On a more personal note, in my tenure as Director of Diversity Education at CMU between 1987 and 2012, I attended meetings at which complaints about disparate treatment of people of color by police officers were dismissed as simply people's perception of what happened. It is no wonder then that people are reluctant to come forward with their complaints. Establishing the Citizens Advisory Board would go a long way to convincing people that maybe things have changed and that their voices might be heard. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
My name's Matt Mertz. I live at 1540 South Bamber, and I'm here to speak in favor of this Citizens Advisory Board. I think it would be a great way for people to be able to communicate with law enforcement. They could, if somebody's having trouble getting information about, say, an accident or something, there would be a board that somebody could come to and say, what do I need to do to find out what's going on? Or somebody would wanted to ask questions about, well, for example, why every time any newspaper does a ride-along with the police, they end up busting people in the Wayside parking lot for alcohol. It's like as soon as you're here at CMU, by the time you're 2 weeks in, you know where to go if you want to drink and you're underage. A couple months ago, a 15-year-old was arrested outside of the Wayside for drinking, and she said she didn't get anything from the Wayside, and it was just dropped like that. It's a question of what laws are being, why some things are not being enforced. A little while ago, a fraternity at CMU was closed down by the university, and it was the fraternity where one of the members died last spring. That fraternity was closed down for alcohol abuse and sexual misconduct. But nobody was ever arrested. No criminal charges were ever brought against anybody. I'd be curious, what is sexual misconduct that's enough to get a fraternity closed down, but no laws were ever broken? There are things that they could be brought up. Some places around the state don't allow high-speed chases after, if it's not a felony. Might be something to consider. This would be a board where something like that could be brought up and people could discuss it. And another thing, it could be used to explain how Mount Pleasant is going to handle the marijuana policy. A couple years ago, Mount Pleasant passed an ordinance to decriminalize marijuana, but people were still being arrested. So it would have been nice if the law enforcement could have sat down and explained why that could be ignored and they could still continue to arrest people. Now that the state has passed it, what is the law going to be? If you're on one side of the street and you're not on campus, are you all right? If you're on the other side, you're not. And if the police bust somebody for possession, or they don't, not bust, let's say find somebody with possession because it's no longer illegal, will they notify the university? Because a student who is busted, who is arrested for drug laws, loses all ability to get any federal funding like student loans, so basically crushes them. So are the police going to notify the university about things like that? And I think the last thing is that I think an advisory committee like this would be good not only for it'd be good for everybody. Law enforcement would be good for the people. It'd give somebody, you know, like I said, transparency. So I hope you vote and pass this board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I live at 1018 Sweeney. My name is Dr. April Burke, and I'm also a faculty member at Central Michigan University. I also support the CAB for a number of reasons, and I just want to build upon some of the comments that have already been made. First of all, we do need police oversight in this community and at a national level. People are afraid. Many people are afraid to go to the police when crimes have been committed against them. And an additional reason to support it is because police are human beings. They make mistakes. Some of them commit crimes. And the current system that is in place is not enough. So I just want to give one example, a recent example of something that happened on campus that received some publicity, which was some female students, African American, who were the subject of a hate crime. And the responding CMU police officer, whatever his motive may have been, responded by trying to explain that there was a similarity between the hate crime that was committed against these persons and the type of hate that police officers receive. That was a very unfortunate comment made by that police officer, to which the police chief responded by apologizing on behalf of the entire police department. That was the right thing to do, to apologize for the mistake that that police officer made. And having a CAB is also a good decision, because in a community where people do not feel safe, where they do not feel safe calling the police, reporting a crime, or calling to report a crime committed by a police officer or some other mistake that may have been made by a police officer is not a safe community for anyone. So I urge this commission to seriously consider what has been put before you by so many members of this community, because I think we all have the right intention in mind, which is to have better relations between the community and the police and to have a safer community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brett Houle. I live at Sachs Hall on campus. I am currently serving a term as a senator for the College of Business, as well as the vice chair of diversity for the Student Government Association at CMU. I was asked to read two statements, one from Gabrielle Mason, who is the current chair of diversity, and then one from Dr. Norma Bailey. The first one is from Gabrielle Mason. Good evening. My name is Gabrielle Mason, and I am a student at Central Michigan and a resident of Mount Pleasant. I come here not as the Diversity Committee Chair for SGA, not as an inclusion assistant for one of the residence halls, but as an African American female student looking for the opportunity to be heard. I'm asking for you to take the opportunity to be an ally for students of color and minorities in this community that experience discrimination and racial or implicit bias from experiences with police. The diversity in the city is growing. More students of color are coming into this town, and while this may not seem urgent to you, As a student whose job is to listen to minority students struggle, the last thing I want to hear is that they do not feel safe in this town due to discrimination and racially biased related incidents with officers. From an African American male getting an authorized prescription for his tinted windows entirely scratched out, an African American male student being told his car was going to get impounded or he was going to go to jail because he looked suspicious, to me being tailed multiple times into my own parking lot on campus and questioned for no reason by officers when a partner of mine was driving. I should not be hearing fellow peers of mine going through the methods in which it's best to deal with officers, immediately panicking and putting their hands where the officers will see them, and then explaining every movement to the officer out of fear. This is a countrywide problem that needs to be dealt with, and this would be a move in the right direction. Police officers are supposed to make us feel safe, and I have a complete faith that barrier can eventually reach a healthy point with this proposal. There is no reason to deliberate further. We are not just students, we are people in this town, welcomed by you, and this is the opportunity to bridge any gaps between the university and the city. I know many more people would like to be here tonight to share their individual stories, to add to the support in the crowd, and to show how urgent this matter is. Many of you have said that this should feel like a second home to the students that go to Central Michigan University, but I cannot call it home, we cannot call it home, if we do not feel the support and reassurance of the city and the police in this matter. To hear you say that this is our second home is one thing, but it's time to put those words into place with this proposal. I ask that you please consider the time and effort people are willing to sacrifice to make this work and the support we would feel as students of color, as residents of this town, to be one step closer to feeling welcomed and like we belong. The second statement is from Dr. Norma Bailey. My name is Dr. Norma Bailey. I live at 22 East Andre Avenue in Mount Pleasant. And while I cannot be here tonight, I also wish to speak in favor of the proposal to create a citizen advisory board and to urge the city commissioners to pass this proposal tonight. Several people have spent countless hours working to present a proposal, including a number of revisions suggested by Ms. Ridley, Chief Loria, and members of the City Commission that will be a first step to improve police-community relations. I don't believe there's any reason to delay any longer. In my mind, waiting has gone on long enough. In 1986, one of my former 8th grade students, who was now a freshman at Northern Michigan University in Marquette, Michigan, was a passenger in a car with a male student of color who was pulled over by the police because of a broken taillight. The first question from the officer was to ask my student Wendy if she was all right, the implication that she might not be. That was 1986 in Marquette. We are in 2018 in Mount Pleasant, and this still occurs in Mount Pleasant as attested to by a number of white female students. I urge the commissions to accept no delay in taking steps to make these kinds of incidents non-existent. This proposal is an opportunity to move forward in this goal, and rather than drag out our feet a moment longer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Andy Blom. I'm a resident of Mount Pleasant at 1304 East Lincoln Street. I come here tonight as a resident and also as a member of the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group, who's been part of a community initiative for the last couple of years to foster dialogue within the city, especially dialogue across differences to understand the needs and the demands and the priorities of all of the groups that make up our community. We started a couple years ago with a community dialogue that was hosted in the library, and we had people come in and talk about what they thought our needs were to become a more inclusive community. One of the top needs that we addressed was to have some kind of greater transparency, greater dialogue, greater attention from the city to interactions that people are having with the city police. Part of this was a reflection of experiences that people reported in that dialogue, especially people of color in our community. but it's also a reflection of the issues that we are seeing nationally. There is no reason to think that Mount Pleasant is unique among communities in the United States in dealing with these problems. What can make us unique is the way in which we face them. We come here tonight with a great deal of hope and trust in this commission that this is a commission that is going to take this issue seriously. This is a commission that has championed a welcoming and inclusive Mount Pleasant. This is a commission that has championed citizen involvement in city government, has championed the work that local government can do, and this is a citizen-initiated proposal that we bring to you reflecting the needs of a large portion of our community that has come here tonight in support. And just to illustrate this, I know not everybody wanted to get up and speak tonight, but I think you see the seats a lot fuller than you usually do at these meetings, and it's because this is an issue that really matters to people. And I want to ask, as we look around the room, if people who came here tonight to urge the commission to pass this proposal to create a Citizens Advisory Board in Mount Pleasant could please rise to show your support. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment this evening on any agenda items? All right, I will close this portion of our meeting. Receipt of petitions and communications. I'll ask the city manager to go through our 3 communication items this evening.
Yes, as you mentioned, we just have 3 this evening. The first is the report on pending items. The second is the October minutes of the Airport Advisory Board. And lastly was a correspondence received from Ann Heidemann of 621 East Andre regarding the Citizen Advisory Board.
All right. Any questions or comments on any of those items? All right. Consent calendar items. Are there any items that anyone would like removed from the consent calendar? Vice Mayor Mattei.
7B, Municipal Legal Services.
Commissioner Ling.
I'd like to have 14J removed.
Any other items? Commissioner Gillis.
Number 8, number 10, and 14K, please.
All right. When we made the consent calendar, we knew there were items that were likely to come off. So that's all right. Anything else this evening? All right, with that, I will ask the city manager to go through all of the items on the agenda that have an asterisk next to them. This allows the commission to have one vote to get through the items that are not controversial a little bit sooner, or things that we've had quite a lot of conversation about. So with that, I will ask the city manager to do that for us.
And I'll do my best to not comment on the things that were just pulled off because they're in my order, so I'll try to skip over the appropriate ones. The first one is a bid for tree trimming services.
Minutes.
Oh, see, I'm messed up already. First one is the minutes of your regular meeting of November 12th and the 2 closed sessions that were held that same evening. The second one is the tree trimming bid, which is an annual bid that we do for tree trimming services throughout the streets in the city. And we're recommending award of the low bid to F&K Tree Service for 2019 at the prices that are indicated in the memo with a not to exceed cost of $41,000 for the year, which is primarily paid from the major and local streets. The second bid before you this evening is actually not a bid. We're recommending a sole source contract with USA Air Gas for the purchase of liquid carbon dioxide. When we did our annual bids for this chemical for the water treatment plant, no bids were received, and the supplier was unwilling to lock in a rate for the entire year. We know based on our volumes, though, that it's highly likely we will purchase more than $10,000 worth of that chemical this year. So in anticipation of that, we're recommending the sole source contract with USA Air Gas, and we will continue to try to bid that next year. Next, we're recommending an agreement for fire protection services with the Charter Township of Union. The city and the township have had an agreement for the city to provide fire protection services since, I believe, the 1960s. The most recent agreement expires at the end of this year, and we're recommending a new 5-year agreement with the township. The most major changes to the agreement from the prior one include the following. It has updated payment numbers for each year of the contract, and that payment is based on a % of emergency runs and commercial inspections applied to our projected costs. It also more clearly defines that the fire chief has enforcement authority if needed under the International Fire Code, and clearly limits the liability of both the city and the city staff in those instances. And lastly, it indicates that if the city were to consider any fees for service during the term of the agreement, the township would also consider those same fees. The township will be taking action on the attached agreement at their meeting on Wednesday evening, and we're recommending you authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement as presented, assuming the township approves it. Under the resolutions regarding amended rates, fees, and charges, as you know, fee policy guidelines were approved in July 2017, and one of the 2018 strategic objectives was for staff to begin to review all of our fees and charges to review compliance with the approved policy guidelines. Annually, we've always reviewed the water fund, wastewater fund, and bag tag rates, but this year, in addition to that, we also reviewed many of the general fund service fees that had not been reviewed for many years. We still have some more to get through, and that will occur in 2019 for a potential 2020 implementation. But the ones before you this evening have all been discussed in your prior work sessions. All of them comply with the policy guidelines to cover full costs, except for the noted exceptions. It's being brought to you this evening instead of the first meeting in December, so that if you modify or change any of them, we have time to implement the changes in the proposed budget before you approve it. The two that have been modified based on the direction given during the work session discussion include the filing fees for the interpretation appeals that go to the Zoning Board of Appeals or to the Fire, Housing, and Sanitary Board of Appeals. You requested that instead of covering the full cost, that maybe we should only cover the out-of-pocket costs to more fully ensure that residents have their right to due process. So based on that desire, we've amended the fees under the zoning and appeal board fees. Secondly, the fees for emergency turn-off and turn-off at water is reduced by 50% as a way to minimize the potential damage to fire property or to private property if an emergency occurs during the off hours. So we're recommending you approve the rest of them that did not get pulled from the consent calendar as presented. And then lastly, we have approval of payrolls and warrants.
I see a motion from Commissioner Joseph, seconded by Commissioner Gillis. Comments and questions on the consent calendar items? I will just mention that when the city manager talked about the fees not being looked at for quite a long time, there are commissioners here on this board who are younger than some of the last rate adjustments on some of these fees. And so there was quite a lot of discussion during the election cycle about our discussions on these fees and these fee increases. And I think that that goes back to when you don't look at a fee for 35 years, it's inevitable that you're going to have a rather large adjustment. But in order to be compliant with state laws and make sure we're not subsidizing people with taxpayer money when it's not appropriate to, these types of fees and these increases, that some of which are rather large, are necessary. So just to put that out there to the audience, that some of them are rather large increases, but that's what happens when we don't look at fees for quite a long period of time. So with that, I will ask all those who are in favor to say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Consent calendar passes. All right, item number 8. Oh, nope, 7B, the municipal legal services. Do you want to do your thing? Vice Mayor Maddie, did you?
I just wanted to, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to jump in and before, the city manager goes over the details of this, the reason why I had pulled this was because, given where I work out of town, like in the counties of Clare and Gladwin, my job duties, I would say exceedingly to almost never, or exceedingly rare or almost never intersect with, my work here on the commission. And this was, one point where this is going to be a abstention or recusal of my participation in this. And my explanation for that is one of the partners for Martineau, Hackett, Romashko, and Klaus, who is going to be getting it's recommended that that firm gets the prosecutorial services bid, is one of the partners there is a spouse of an employer. And so in light of that connection between that partner and that firm and an employer of mine, I wanted to avoid any possible appearance of conflict, and so I'll be abstaining from this. I would note that our policy or ordinance now is a little bit more specific, where it addresses personal gain or benefit, but in this particular instance, I think there's an issue where in order to properly avoid the potential appearance of conflict, I will be abstaining or recusing myself from this. I would also note that, and I'm sure the manager will also indicate this as well, with the committee that reviewed the bidding process, I had no participation in that, and further, I had no discussion with this with any other commissioners on this matter. So I just wanted to give that background on my part.
Thank you. Then I will ask the city manager to go over item number 7B.
As the commission is aware, we sent out requests for qualifications for both our prosecutorial services and our general counsel services. We indicated that firms could bid on either both services or just one of them, whatever they preferred. Two of the firms that we received qualification bids from bid on both services, 2 bid on just general counsel, and 1 firm bid on prosecutorial services only. As the vice mayor indicated, the committee was appointed by the mayor that was comprised of Mayor Lentz, Commissioners Ling and Kulik, Public Safety Director Loria, City Clerk Jeremy Howard, and myself. After interviewing the firms, reference checking, and discussing, the committee is making the following 2 recommendations for you this evening. We recommend that we stay with the firm of Martineau, Hackett, O'Neill, and Klaus for prosecutorial services. The firm has served the city well for decades, and there's certainly value for having a local firm for immediate access to our police officers, our code staff, our fire staff, the court officers, and to defendants. Although we were concerned that the monthly retainer for this service is getting a bit high, and things will be changing over the next year with changes due to the MIP laws that occurred this year, the new marijuana laws, having a new county prosecutor, and having new judges. So we've asked the firm, or will be asking the firm, to provide us better data over the next year on the actual caseload and our efforts so we can continue to evaluate that retainer amount. The second recommendation is for our general counsel services, and the committee is recommending that we enter into an agreement with Foster, Swift, Collins, and Smith from Grand Rapids, with Mike Homier as the lead attorney. This was a difficult recommendation, as Dickinson Wright has served our city well and has been helpful in many partnership agreements that we've entered into over the years. The committee, though, was very comfortable with the lead attorney, Mike Homier, and the municipal client spoke very highly of the service. And as you know, we've had quite a bit of turnover with attorneys at Dickinson Wright this year. The payment arrangement with Foster, Swift, Collins, and Smith would be different than we've ever encountered before, in that it would be based on a per-hour amount instead of a monthly retainer. The firm feels that this fee arrangement has served their clients well, and they believe it will serve the city well, but they agreed to continue to review that throughout the year to make sure that it is serving us well. So we're recommending both of those appointments to you this evening that would be effective January 1st.
I see a motion from Commissioner Kulik, seconded by Commissioner Ling. Any comments or questions on this item? Commissioner Kulik.
I'd just like to say that our choice to go with Foster Swift shouldn't be looked as a negative for the work that our previous attorneys have done for us. I felt they've done an outstanding job, but there's been a lot of turnover in their firm, and Mike felt it seemed like he would give us a better service in years to come.
Any other comments or questions? I found it really enjoyable to go through this process and interview these firms, and I felt like Mike Homier was a, if you will, city nerd, and really is the kind of guy who will, as soon as we enter an agreement with him, we'll probably read everything we have to do, and we'll come up with creative solutions in the future with future commissions so that we can continue to be a progressive community that gets things done. And I just really liked his personality and the way he tackled problems, and we ended up in a conversation talking about things that he wasn't prepared for, and he had case law off the top of his head to support stances one way or the other. I was really, really impressed with him. So I am definitely supportive of this. So with no other further comment and questions, I will say all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And then we have the note of one recused vote, so 6-0. That motion passes. Item number 8, consider a resolution in support of Nottawa Township's sewer project.
Yes, at your last meeting, you had representatives from Nottawa Township that made a presentation indicating that the 3 options that they've studied for treatment, the Nottawa Township Board preferred option is to have the city treat it at our wastewater plant. The township must submit a report by December 1st indicating their preferred option to begin final design. So they're looking for confirmation from you this evening that we're willing to work toward an intergovernmental agreement with Nottawa Township. The agreement would indicate that the township will construct a force main to carry the sewage, the city would process it, and we would bill based on the amount treated. The city cost would cover our costs plus the appropriate depreciation and replacement for our equipment. We're recommending you approve the resolution as presented, which would indicate to the DEQ and to the township that you're willing to work toward a mutually beneficial intergovernmental agreement, and the resolution indicates the reasons why we believe it's important for the city as well. So we recommend you approve it as presented.
I see a motion from Commissioner Kulik, seconded by Commissioner Joseph. Comments or questions on this item? Commissioner Gillis.
My concern is during the flood of last summer, our wastewater treatment plant could not accommodate our own city flow from our residents. So I have reservations about letting another township tie in to our water treatment plant. The overflow did go into the river, and anyone that knows me, I am an advocate for the Chippewa River, looking into where the E. coli is coming from and finding ways to prevent that contamination. But I'm also concerned that if we have another flood or a similar downpour of rain that would our water treatment plant cannot compensate for, the release of those wastewater treatment to the river is exactly what we're trying to prevent. So I was wondering if you had any comforting words on that.
That certainly did happen during the flood. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but our capacity at our plant is 4.14 gallons per day, and because of all of the 4.14 million gallons per day. Thank you. Yeah, that would be kind of interesting, huh?
We can do one household.
Yeah, like I said, I can't remember the numbers. No. During the flood, I think because of all the overflow we had from the stormwater and from some improperly hooked up sump pumps, we were, I think, 3 or 4 times that level, which created the overflow. But on a regular basis, in our memo, I indicated that we average about 2.2 million gallons a day, and the amount of flow we're expecting to get under this agreement would only be 0.08. So I think on a regular basis, the wastewater treatment plant can easily handle this flow. But certainly if we get another flood like we got in June of 2017, whether we had this flow or not, we could encounter the same overflow problems we had at that point in time. So I can't give you guarantees that won't happen when we have an epic situation like that again.
And when you say stormwater, I'm confused. I thought our stormwater went directly to the river.
It's supposed to, but because everything was so overflowed, a lot of it ended up going into our plant instead. But you're right, it's supposed to go directly to the river without going through the plant.
Because 0.08 is almost 1. And then we're talking we only have like 1 million per gallon. Well, 0.08 is...
That's 8, not 80.
8 100s. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kulik.
When we did have the situation during the flood, it's not like we discharged totally raw sewage into the river. It was treated with chlorine before it was released to the river. Isn't that true?
To a large extent, but there were some
E.
E. coli going into the river, yes.
And
but I would add also that one of the things in terms of protecting the river, the E. coli that we generally see, it comes from that Nottawa Township area, and this would solve that problem on an ongoing daily basis.
one other thing, in other communities that I've been involved with, one of the problems with the overflows at the wastewater treatment plants, obviously Nancy mentioned the illegally hooked up sump pumps, but another problem is all those manholes along the street. That's not a tight seal on those things, and there are rubber gaskets that are available out there that can be put under that manhole cover that will reduce the amount of infiltration of stormwater into the sanitary system, and that may be something we want to look at long term to reduce infiltration of stormwater into our systems.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Gillis.
And there will be no cost to the city for this because the line that they're planning on putting in, they're getting a grant from the state of Michigan to allow them. We're not financing, we're not adding anything in.
They're getting a grant from the state of Michigan, but they're also taking out a loan for some constructions of their project as well. So I don't know what's covering what between all their funding sources, but you are correct. The city will not be paying for the force main, and we will not be loaning the money. They'll be getting those revenue sources from other areas.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments or questions, I will ask all of those who are in favor of this resolution to say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That resolution passes. Item number 10, considering a contract with Middle Michigan Development Corporation.
Again, this is a long-term contract we've had since, I believe, the 1980s with Middle Michigan Development Corporation to provide economic development services for the city. The most recent contract expires at the end of this year. We're recommending a 2-year agreement at the same dollar amount as the prior agreement, which is $22,500, to obtain the services that are outlined in Appendix A of the agreement, which has been updated to more accurately reflect the types of services that MMDC is providing the city these days. And I shouldn't say accurately, it's a constantly evolving process of what we need for services, but Exhibit A depicts the current ones that are projected for 2019. So we're recommending you authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign the agreement.
I see a motion from Commissioner Kulik, seconded by Commissioner Joseph. Comments or questions on this item? Commissioner Gillis?
From the time I joined the City Commission in 2016, we've been looking at contracts for economic development to see if we're getting return on investment. Every year, the end of 2016, the end of 2017, and also this year, we've been presented with brochures and Mr. McBride at the podium telling us about the services that they provide. But in my opinion, the cost of $22,600 on a yearly basis could be the services that we get from Mid-Michigan Development Corporation can be accommodated by our own economic development director and the staff that we provide for salaries here at the city. So I have been very reluctant to approve this year. I haven't seen the return on investment that we've been promised, so I will be voting no.
Commissioner Kulik.
Economic development's something you have to believe in. It's difficult to measure year by year because it's a what if. What if we didn't do this? How many local businesses that we have would have closed their doors and went away? How many local businesses that we have wouldn't expand or think about expanding it into our market? How many things, because Jim McBride has been the director of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and was just appointed to one of the statewide advisory boards, how many local businesses going to him for assistance he knows in the back of his head, because he's been doing this not his whole life, but for probably seems like his whole life now that he's been doing it. But I will be voting in favor of this. This is something that we as a community absolutely must do. We are competing against every other community in the state. Frankly, we're competing against every other state, every other community in the country, and I will be supporting this.
Any other comments or questions this evening on this item? And say, I will just comment that I will also be supporting this contract. I came in with Commissioner Gillis and was fairly critical of the work that the Economic Development corporations were doing for the city, and have seen great improvements in the reporting, the numbers, the keeping track of what we're doing in the city versus the county or the region. And I want to really thank Jim for that opportunity and that increased improvement in letting us know kind of what activities are taking place. Economic development is something that I truly value and think that we need to do as a community in lots of different forms. And so I think that having lots of different contracts and agencies and people working on economic development can never hurt us. So I will be supporting this evening. If I see no other comments or questions, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
Nay.
That passes 6-1. Item number 11, a hotly discussed item, considering establishment of a citizen advisory board.
As you well know, at your last meeting, and as you've heard from public comment tonight, a communication was received from the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group asking you to create a citizen advisory board, and a motion was made to put this item on your agenda for discussion. At the time, we mentioned that we had a few concerns with some of the items in the full proposal, but felt those items could be addressed. When we indicated that, we didn't really realize we would be looking at taking action for approval in such a short period of time, but the group was very helpful in addressing some of those concerns that we had in the full proposal, and was very quick about turning that around. There was only one concern that we shared with them that was not addressed in the new proposal, and that has to do with who makes appointments to the board. You requested that we obtain information from local law enforcement agencies about what kind of advisory boards currently exist in the community. In your packet, we included Central Michigan University's policy, which is required by state law, and we reconfirmed that nothing else exists for other law enforcement agencies within our community. As we've indicated, and we still strongly believe, we believe in the power of communication and the dialogue, and have been upfront with, or have been very supportive of that from the very beginning. What we are concerned about, though, is the public perception of this board. The various articles that have been written in the newspapers and the public comments received and some of the social media posts often refer to it as an oversight board or a review board, and that reference concerns us. In our history, we've found that having longer discussions about very important topics end up with better results. A couple of examples are our human rights ordinance and our ethics policy. In both of those cases, we often had many people supportive of an initial proposal, but we took a little bit more time to refine the proposal, talk more about it, and have further dialogue before it was approved. You can call it bureaucracy, you can call it government moving slow, whatever you want to call it, but I think we would all agree that in both of those instances, the final document we had that was approved was better written, better understood, and that further dialogue was extremely beneficial for our entire community. So our idea in putting together the resolution, the alternative resolution for your consideration this evening, was not to reject the proposal that was given to you. It was more so to expand upon the current dialogue that is happening and make it better, and have a citizen advisory board or some dialogue mechanism that would be even better than any of us could have envisioned. We've done it before, and it's worked well for us, and we believe it enhances the success of it. So our goal in recommending that alternative resolution was that very reason. It certainly is not a rejection of the proposal, as was indicated this evening. That was certainly not on our mind. It was indicated that we wanted our board to be a model. In order for it to be a model, we need to make sure it's going to be effective, and we want ours to be set up for success. So the alternative resolution we've suggested indicates support for increasing that dialogue and communication, and in fact starts that dialogue in a very productive way by sharing expectations and managing the expectations of the board. It would merely create a temporary committee that within 3 months' time would further refine and improve the makeup of the board and the expectations of it. Two questions that we've been asked at the staff level over the last 2 weeks are how a 3-member advisory board is going to assist with communication when we have other methods that we haven't fully taken advantage of. More importantly, the second question is, what will the 1-year review consist of? What is it really that we're trying to accomplish with this citizen advisory board, and will we be able to adequately evaluate that in 1 year? We want it to be successful. We want the dialogue to start and continue for a long period of time. So that's why we've offered the alternative resolution for your consideration, to merely take 3 more months to have further dialogue and broader dialogue to ensure its success. So this evening on your agenda, you have the revised proposal that was received from the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group, and then you have the other resolution that we've drafted for your consideration.
Commissioner Ling.
I'd like to make a motion based on one of the 2 recommendations, and then if there's a second, I'll give an explanation of why I'm making the motion. And I have copies of the motion that I'll pass out after I read it. I move to approve the revised request for the creation of a Citizens Advisory Board as presented by the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group, with the exception of the proposed section describing membership, and that section be replaced with the following wording. The membership of the CAB will consist of 3 persons approved by the City Commission for a 1-year term. The members of the board will be recommended by the Appointments Committee. The Appointments Committee will choose 1 nominee from applications submitted directly to the city, as well as 1 nominee recommended by the SGA and 1 nominee recommended by the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group. The Appointments Committee will make the final decision on the 3 nominees, that should say 3 rather than 5, on the 3 nominees to be submitted to the City Commission for approval. I further move that before the first meeting of the CAB, the Citizens Advisory Board, the city attorney be asked to meet with the appointed members of the Citizens Advisory Board, the mayor, the city manager, the Director of Public Safety, and a representative from the Police Officers Association to develop proposed rules of procedure that cover issues related to confidentiality, the Open Meetings Law, and Freedom of Information Act, the timing of information provided by the Citizens Advisory Board concerning complaints filed involving law enforcement, and any other issues that the attorney believes are relevant. The attorney should recommend how the rules of procedure will be adopted.
I see a second from Commissioner Joseph.
Okay, now,
Commissioner-
pass these out so that people can
Commissioner
take a look
Kulik.
at it.
I'd like to move to postpone the motion for 3 months.
Can I ask for a point of personal privilege?
Yes.
I'd like to ask that the mayor withhold recognition of that motion until I've at least had a minute to explain the purpose of the motion. And then if there's a motion to postpone, I would be happy for us to consider that.
Okay. I will accept that point.
Thank you. I'm very sympathetic with the comments that were made by the city manager and do not disagree with the fact that there still are some details that we need to work out. And I very much agree that it is important for us to all feel comfortable with the proposal that we have. So once I've explained the reasons for the proposal that I've made, I would be willing to entertain a motion to postpone. I don't know whether or not for the 3 months it was suggested in order for the commission to have some opportunity to think about it. But what I've tried to do with this motion is to address 3 things. One, to recognize the work that has gone into this proposal and the intent of the proposal, which is a relatively limited attempt to simply begin the process of looking at some of the procedures that are used in dealing with complaints. We've had a lot of issues that were raised during the public comment section. A lot of them go beyond what this particular board is going to be able to address, but this board allows us to begin the process of addressing the way in which some of the procedures are handled. But the purpose of this motion is to say, let's take this basic idea of having a citizens advisory board, which we all agreed it allows us to begin dialogue and communication, but postpone the actual enactment of the board, the board functioning, until we have been able to deal with some of the issues that were raised by the city manager in her comments, because those are important issues, and it is important that we all be on the same page at the point at which this is adopted. So I think it's a compromise between the resolution that was proposed and the motion to accept the proposal. And I guess I would say that the reason why I think we should take this step is because Mount Pleasant's always been a leader in community policing. This is an effort to look at the concept of community policing. What does it mean, and how do we, as a community, make sure that the community and the police are working together? That's been the goal of most of the recommendations that have been made for dealing with community police relations. I think we've been in the forefront of trying to be a part of that, and I think that this just extends that. We have things like the Neighborhood Resource Group, our Youth Services Unit, the Police Academy, the work with Central Michigan University. All of those, I think, are great examples of the fact that we already are interested in doing community policing and have been working in that area. The establishment of the CAB is the logical next step in that. These types of review boards are exactly what various national organizations, including the President's Task Force on Policing in the 21st century, was talking about. So, for example, in a program on National Public Radio recently, it said, these days when federal authorities investigate a city's police department, one of the main things they insist on is the civilian review of complaints, and that's exactly what we're doing. And the same kinds of ideas were included in the President's Task Force when they talked about the need for having the public involved in looking at procedures and policies of police departments, and that's all this does, is to look at the procedure for the handling of complaints. I understand the concern that this looks like we're doing more than we're doing, except we're not doing more than we're doing. We have made it very clear that all this is doing is looking at the complaint process. It's a small first step. It's not an appeals board. Some of these review boards that are set up are appeals board. This is not an appeals board. It's not an investigative board. We're not asking them to investigate the complaints, do the research. It's just looking at how are the complaints filed, what happens after they're filed, and once we've seen that for a year or so and we see how it's handled, summarize it and make any recommendations to the Director of Public Safety that seem appropriate. So they're not involved in appeals, investigation, or disciplinary action. It's a board that will review the procedures for handling citizens' complaints, summarize the results of that review, and make recommendations to the Director of Public Safety. I think it's a limited but an important first step, and while I think there are details that need to be worked out, I think that we can at least accept in concept the Citizens Advisory Board and then work out the rest of the details with the city attorney to make sure, in fact, we have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's.
Commissioner Kulik.
I still make motion for a 3-month postponement. Commissioner Ling, you've been the last person I would expect to vote against a motion to postpone. Everything in the past has had to be absolutely perfect before you would vote yes for it. Now you're saying, let's rush this thing through and get it through, and then we'll work out the details later. No, we get bad decisions when we do things that way. We did the medical marijuana. It's taken us over a year to get to where we're at now, and the voters in the state of Michigan in November said now we're going to have recreational marijuana. It throws a wrench in everything that we've done. My motion still stands. I move for a 3-month postponement so that we can look at the issues brought forth by the city manager and her staff.
Okay. Is there a second on that postponement? Commissioner Gillis. Okay. Other comments or questions on the postponement? Commissioner Ling.
I guess I would ask what we will be doing during the time of that postponement, since this is not, I've got a motion on the floor where it's postponing the motion. So is it the motion that I made that's being postponed? And therefore we won't take any action on the having the attorney look at these issues?
Commissioner Kulik?
Perhaps, yeah.
I want the 3 months spent doing the review that Nancy Ridley suggested, that we iron out these details, we get the I's dotted, we get the T's crossed. Might not be a bad idea to have some citizen advisory public hearings like we did with the medical marijuana. But at this point, I think if we approve it tonight and then start dotting our I's and crossing our T's, why aren't we doing anything? Well, things are going too fast for me.
Commissioner Gillis, did you have any, sorry, I just saw your,
Sure.
I didn't know if you had a comment. Don't mean to call you out.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I just want to explain to the public. 2 weeks ago, when we received the communication regarding the establishment of the Citizen Advisory Board, we received that under the receipts of petitions and communications. We are not supposed to be voting on an item under receipts of petitions and communications. It's something that just came to us for the first time. Some of us, like myself, it was the first time that I read anything about this. We were not supposed to have to vote on that 2 weeks ago. A commissioner decided to say, hey, I want to make a motion. Our city clerk said, yes, that is a possibility. And what transpired 2 weeks ago happened. There was some concerns about how it was written as an advisory or oversight board, that if I would have known that it was moving to an agenda item and being voted on, I would have prepared a statement to share with you. This evening, it is an agenda item. This evening, now the motion is completely being changed once again to things that we have not discussed as a city commission. I would like to remind our city commissioners that at our retreat that that the city taxpayers pay for every January or February for us all to get together and decide what our goals are for the following year, not the year we are currently in, and how we want to deal with things that come up. At our retreat, the person who led that said that there shouldn't be any rabbits pulled out of the hat, that everyone should have time to consume what we're voting on, think it through. Nothing should be done on a split second. Here's a motion and I want you to vote on it. I can also reflect on past organizations of or issues that have taken months to resolve. Medical marijuana, Human Rights Committee. I do believe the more thinking and dialogue that goes into this, the better it will end up being before we approve something and then have to take something back that we didn't consider. I have not considered this enough to know where I am at. And that's just me. I have not had enough time to talk to people and to consider this myself a brand new motion. That is not meaning that we are rejecting this motion. This is not meaning that we don't hear your concerns. It is meaning that we want to take time so that all of us can feel comfortable with this and know that this is going to sustain not only for another year, but and be a model if that's what we think that Mount Pleasant needs. My second concern is not all the law enforcement agencies in Mount Pleasant. This is not an intergovernmental resolution. This is one law enforcement agency. And I know you CMU students out there have had, if this is what's happening, I'm sure CMU police you've encountered and may have some issues with. It is not just the Mount Pleasant Police Department. And I don't want to isolate or target our city employees as a problem. If we want this to happen, we should try to incorporate all 5 law enforcement agencies. I can also say, us 7 elected city commissioners are your voices. And I know you can shake your head at me, but we are. You know that you can, anybody that knows me can come and contact me and speak of this. I know our director has open door policy. Any complaints, you should know that we are here to represent you. Our director and our captain has open door policy. You have to understand that if you have problems or complaints, you need to reach out to one of us or the director or a captain and speak to them. And if you get no recourse, then you come up here and you say, hey, I have this issue. But to throw all of this on one law enforcement agency is really not the thing to do. We should be incorporating all the law enforcement agencies. We also have several different groups. We have the Human Rights Committee, we have the Diversity, we have the City CMU Liaison Group. There are a lot of different groups that you can be heard at and speak to us so that we can then address the problem and do it the right way, not a motion that gets thrown at us at the dais the night of the meeting. We are not supposed to be voting on stuff like this, people. Every time we have a retreat, our person that works with us tells us not to do it this way. Last thing, when I was out canvassing and going door to door, I did not hear any complaints of our law enforcement. I know that's hard to believe. It is. But I had not one person. I had people complain about Parcel B. I had people complain about city staff, several city staff. Now, I wonder if we had all these complaints
Mayor,
about...
I apologize for interrupting Commissioner Gillis, but I had a point of order. like two actually. The motion on the floor is a motion to postpone, so if the subject matter can be, constrained to that motion, and also in terms of the, comments from the general public, in terms of the order that we ordinarily go through, I believe that is something that is not appropriate at the moment. So if we can go through with the discussion as presented, I think we can more, expeditiously handle the motions on the floor.
I think the postponement would do us justice to get what you're looking for and get it done right. You have to trust all of us here that are elected that we have your best interest at heart.
Okay. So we have a motion to postpone and a second on the floor. I will ask that this be, well, unless there are other comments or questions on the postponement, I would ask that this be not only a voice vote, but also a raising of hands. I believe Commissioner Ling has another comment or question.
I think I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion postponed. I'm going to make sure with the parliamentarian that I can do that. This is a motion to amend the timing and the timing of the motion to postpone.
I think so.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we postpone action on this motion until we've had the opportunity to refer it to our new attorney firm and ask them for a recommendation on the best way in which to proceed.
Does she need a second?
She will need a second. Okay, Commissioner Gillis is seconding the amendment to the postponement of the amendment. I love when this happens. Commissioner Ling, I will let you.
And I'll admit, I'm not even sure I'm going to vote for it. I'd like to have a vote on this tonight, but I'm looking at the dais and I'm not seeing that it's likely to get passed tonight, just to be realistic about it. And so my feeling is I don't want to stop the action. I have sympathy with the comments that have been made by some of the commissioners. We did ask for changes in the proposal. We got the changes in the proposals. They were very consistent with what the commission had asked for. And so I think that the diversity group and the groups that they were working for were very attentive to responding to the things that we had asked them to do. However, it has still been a relatively short time period in terms of the information that the board as a whole has had. It was over Thanksgiving weekend. I don't imagine everybody was poring over the packet and reading all the details. So I suspect that for a lot of people, there's a lot of new information here and they need some time to be able to consider it. We do have a new legal firm, and I think it would be interesting to get some input from them on the direction of this proposal. I am in favor of the diversity group's proposal, but I do think there are details that we need to work out in terms of procedure. And if we can do that in a way where we get input from that attorney and the commission feels more comfortable with the vote on the proposal, then I'm willing to postpone it for a short period of time until the attorney's had a chance to review it and come back to us with his recommendations on the best way to proceed.
Commissioner Kulik.
I'd like to propose an amendment to Commissioner Ling's amendment that following the receipt of the report from the city attorney that this city commission hold at least one work session to discuss the issue.
We haven't even had a work session.
Can we amend
before it be brought back here for a vote.
Jeremy, can we?
Yeah, I mean, you're changing the time frame, so that one I have no issue with, amending that postponement. You're just trying to add to that amendment?
Add to that amendment that after the report is received from the attorney, that we have at least one work session issue before it be brought back for a vote. This is a major thing that we have not even had a work session on.
Vice Mayor Matt, I would unless you have a point of order, I believe I need to ask for a second on that amendment.
Yeah, I would just express a point of order that, you know, I mean, not to be critical of the city clerk as parliamentarian, but the, you know, in terms of the ordinary course, as I understand amendments being made, that, you know, it's, you know, the first amendment, the secondary amendment, and then anything after that is out of order. I think the one issue I have with the way how, you know, there was the original motion to postpone for 3 months, then an amendment to that to, you know, change it to what Commissioner Ling had described. And I think we're getting outside of the, you know, the terms of, you know, the order that you would ordinarily have to follow through with amendments. So I'm hoping that, you know, if there's another way we can take this in sequence, you know, so it's more orderly and more makes sense rather than trying to like work backward from a secondary to a primary amendment. I'm hoping that, you know, the end result here is something that can, you know, make sense in an orderly fashion.
I would agree with that. I think you can deal with that first amendment that changes from 3 months to postponing until the attorney can look at it. If that passes, then another amendment to that motion would be in order, which could add something to the existing now passed amendment motion if that passes. Or if it doesn't pass, you could make it another amendment to the postponement at that time. It's cleaner that way, correct?
And I let you all know that I love you so much when you make all these amendments and postponements and amendments and amendments. So I will ask Commissioner Kulik to withdraw that amendment at this point, and...
Was there a second?
Oh, no. Well, so I don't think I can accept his amendment. And so we have an amendment on the table that was supported by Commissioner Gillis, correct?
Which amendment?
Commissioner Ling's amendment to postpone it not for the 3-month time, but until the new attorney can look at it and make recommendations on how to make this proposal better for everyone involved. Or I'm sure there was wording there that was different. Commissioner Ling.
Right, let me, the reason I made that amendment, the amendment to the postponement, was because my concern with postponing, I said when I made my motion, I'd be open to possibly postponing because there's a lot of new information and it may be that people need to take a look at it before they're comfortable voting on it, and I think that's reasonable. On the other hand, I don't want it just sitting there for 3 months either. My concern with just making a motion to postpone for 3 months is we haven't described anything that's going to happen during that 3 months, and with my amendment, what I hope I'm saying is, but we're taking the next step, and the next step is we're going to have our attorney review it so that we know if there's any concerns in terms of the charter, the state law, what our powers are, and then we have more information so we can proceed, and when it comes back, this is the amendment that the amendment that I had, the motion that I made is what we're back to considering. I certainly don't have any problem with our having a work session on that. I mean, I think we can address that after we've decided what we're postponing to. But my concern is to say, I don't want us just postponing it. I want us to be taking some constructive action during that postponement. And my thought on that is sending it to the attorney is the constructive action that we would be taking.
Commissioner Kulik.
Just a question. By that motion, this item cannot be brought back to us until after the first of the year because she asked that it be our new attorney that gives us this information. So this will not come back to us until after the first of the year. Would that be correct?
Correct, as I understand.
That was my intent.
Commissioner Joseph.
I just wanted to comment that I will be voting against this postponement. I think that this amendment to postpone to get a legal opinion is redundant when the original motion by Commissioner Ling implicitly says that, or explicitly says that we're going to be seeking our attorney's opinion and also to get the formed committee together with the mayor, the city manager, and the director of public safety to really look over how this committee will function. So I can't support this motion.
Vice Mayor Mattei.
And just very succinctly, I would agree with the comments of Commissioner Joseph. You know, I believe that the proposal on the table is appropriate to move forward at this point. There's, I mean, if we, you know, or if we're waiting, I have a feeling like we'll end up in essentially the same spot or near the same spot. So, you know, either we can, you know, where we're at today. So, like, in the interest of moving forward, I'm not in the mindset of postponing this.
Other comments or questions on this amendment to a postponement to the motion? Again, I'll ask for a show of hands as well as a vocal vote. All those in favor of this amendment say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Makes it less confusing, actually.
The amendment does not pass. So we are now need to have a vote on the postponement. Commissioner Kulik.
Now we're going to vote on my 3-month postponement.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming that's voted down, I could still make another motion before we get back to the main motion. Is that correct?
We can make all kinds of motions. We can be here all night.
Okay.
I don't really want to be here all night, but technically, yes. So we have a motion to postpone for 3 months on the floor. Any further comments or questions on this postponement? Commissioner Joseph.
I will also be opposing this motion as well. I don't know that besides getting a legal counsel opinion and really firming up some of the details about the Open Meetings Act and confidentiality issues, that any postponement is really of value. I feel like we're just kicking the can down the road, and there's been a lot of work done in to form this committee, and now it's come to our table. And I can understand the sentiment of you want to have a good plan going in, but I feel like the resolution in front of us that's been recommended has in it already a review process after a year. So we're going to be able to see what has been accomplished in a year and how to make that process better if we feel that it needs to be made better. So I will be voting no against the postponement for 3 months.
No.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the postponement? With that, Commissioner Gillis.
I just think there are too many open spaces in this motion of how many things that still need to be addressed. Confidentiality, we're talking about Open Meetings Act. We have a half a dozen different things that we're going to have the lawyer look at because it's not part of the creation of this CAB. We never do this. We never do this. We usually have a full description of what the rules are, who's appointed, who does the appointment, what they're charged with. So it seems a little preliminary that we are dropped with a new motion that we're supposed to consider this evening. And that's the reason why I will be voting for the postponement.
So all those in favor of postponing this item for 3 months, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Please. All right. Commissioner Kulik.
I move that we postpone this item until after we've been able to have a work session on this and discuss the opinion of the attorney.
Second.
All right. So I have a motion from Commissioner Kulik, seconded by Commissioner Gillis, to postpone until a work session can be held. And what was the last part about an attorney?
And have attorney's opinion on the issues that Commissioner Ling, Open Meetings Act, confidentiality, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Are you really cold, Commissioner Ling?
I'm sorry.
Are you really cold?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just thinking, what should
Okay. I didn't know if I needed to ask someone to turn the heat up. Commissioner Joseph.
I just wanted to point out that if this motion passes, this will not happen before the first of the year. We have one more meeting scheduled, or actually possibly two, but traditionally the second meeting of December is canceled because in case of this year, it will be on Christmas Eve. So I don't see that likely to happen, that this commission will want to have a meeting on Christmas Eve. And generally, the only reason we would have a meeting on the second meeting in December is if we can't agree to our budget. And so the budget discussion is going to overtake the process of this commission for the end of the year, meaning that this conversation will not happen until the new commission seats.
Just a clarification, Commissioner Joseph, the second meeting in December is actually scheduled for December 17th. We knew not to schedule it on the holidays, so they're scheduled for December 10th and 17th, just as a clarification.
Thank you. Sorry.
Still something that people probably don't want to come to, but not Christmas Eve. Okay, so we have a new postponement and a second on the floor, correct? Everyone? Okay. So any further comments or questions on this new postponement? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Please, guys, this might be a long night. All right. So we currently have a motion on the floor proposed by Commissioner Ling to approve the CAB with some new criteria that was given to us this evening, talking about so we're approving the board, but before the board convenes, we have some details that we would like the attorney, the staff, the appointees to kind of work through to make sure we have everything ready to go. Is that my understanding of where we are? Commissioner Ling?
Yes. What we have is, and I'll go back to the way in which I introduced this to begin with. I really think what we have is a combination of accepting the proposal and the resolution that asks that we look at more detail. Because I think all that's going to happen if we approve this is that we will have created the Citizens Advisory Board. We can go through the process of making an appointment and receiving appointments from the two groups, but then nothing else is going to happen until all of these other issues are dealt with. It says that further move that before the first meeting, these issues will have to be dealt with. I'm perfectly comfortable with once those details are worked out, that comes back to the commission, that we have a work session, that we discuss it. I've asked that the attorney let us know how these rules of procedure should be handled. I'm sort of assuming that probably that would have to come back to the board and we would accept those rules of procedure. So it seems to me that all we've done is to say we're going to have this board. We still have a lot of questions. We think the attorney needs to be looking at those questions, and the board won't actually start functioning until those questions have been answered. So I believe that even though I'm sure that people are feeling like this is out of the blue, I don't feel it's out of the blue. I feel like it's taking the two ideas and trying to put them together in a way that allows us to move forward. So I'm going to be supportive of it.
Are there other comments or questions on this motion?
I just wanted to support Commissioner Ling's motion. I think that it really firms up maybe the questions that I've had when I've read the proposal is who does the appointments and just some of the clerical issues that are probably weren't foreseen. But what this does is get the ball rolling. We're going to have a committee as soon as we can. And I think the importance of this committee is just made by everyone here and all your comments. We haven't had one person come to us and say, this is a bad idea. I don't want this to happen. And so I think it's foolish to say that we don't want this. And I don't think that our commission is feels that way, but I personally feel that delaying this is not a wise choice. I think that a delay and a transparency and a group that can really add to the feeling of our community becoming a home, especially for people who are students or professors who come from maybe across the world or across the country, is something that we should really value. My time on the commission, one thing that has been so central to everything we've done is how do we make this place attractive to people who are not here, and how do we get the people who are here who think they're going to be temporarily here to stay here. And I think this addresses that. It's part of the equation. And when it comes to police and community relations, this brings transparency. And the greatest transparency is in sunlight. And that's a quote by a justice of the Supreme Court. And that quote was about how corruption can infiltrate our public institutions. And I'm not saying that that is an issue necessarily, but wouldn't it be great to have a board that facilitates that conversation so we know for sure that we don't have an issue? So that's my thoughts, and that's why I'll be supporting Commissioner Ling's motion.
Commissioner Kulik.
I'm not convinced that this is the way that we need to go. I'm not convinced that the duties that we're looking this Citizens Advisory Board to perform could not be performed by the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group or some other existing group, so I'll be voting no against this. I think we need more time to talk it out as a commission.
Any other comments or questions on this motion this evening? Seeing none, I will just close with a comment before we take a vote. The vote on this is one that appears at first light to be an easy vote. It appears at first light that this is, of course, something that we need in our community. It is something that we have a need for in our community. It is something that people are passionate about in this community. I wish you were all here when we had the sidewalk shoveling conversation, right? This is an important thing. But when I put my mayor hat on, when I put my city commission hat on, when I put my government hat on, I see that this proposal does have some deficiencies. Not in whether or not it should happen, but from a city government standpoint, there are some questions, some kinks in it, if you will, that probably could be smoothed out, right? This is something that could go under the iron and have a little bit of ironing before it's ready to finally be proposed. So I really struggled with this all day, and I went up and down and up and down and up and down on if this is something that I would be able to feel good about, because I've spent the last 3 years on the city commission talking about how wonderful this community is, how progressive this community is, how inclusive this community should be. I have talked about how local government and activism and getting a group of people here makes a difference, and how local government is important. But I've also spent the last 3 years here being a wonderful leader and showing the city staff that this community appreciates them and respects them and finds them important, and that we value the work that our city staff does, and that we wouldn't be the great city we are without them, all of them. And I've spent 3 years doing both of these things. And this is the moment when these two things kind of clash internally in me. And so I appreciate, while I don't appreciate that we got it at the last minute, I do appreciate Commissioner Ling's attempt to, your proposal, your motion that kind of balances those two needs internally. It balances that conversation I was having within myself today. And how can we this board essentially a pre-approval, but allow someone to take an iron over it and just work out those kinks. So I will be supporting this evening, not a detriment to anybody in this community, not trying to rush something through when the process of this hasn't been something that makes me feel comfortable at the end of the day. The process of how this came through to us is something that made me uncomfortable, not the proposal itself, not the idea of this, not the need for this, not the education and the conversation and the very important message of having this board has. And so with that, I will ask for a vote. So, again, a show of hands as well as a vocal vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you. So that motion passes 6-1. So we are moving on to item number 12. By the way, item number 13 is very exciting for those of you in the audience. We're talking about something that we've worked on for years and years and years to come to an agreement to be better with this community. So I'm just going to say, if you wanted to stay through item number 13.
It is important.
I've spent 2 years on it. So, all right, item number 12. I will ask the city manager to go over item number 12 for us.
The proposal for restructuring of the funding, responsibilities, and boards for the downtown was postponed at your last meeting. Since that time, Commissioner Ling has suggested an alternative to the composition of the TIFA board. The original resolution we presented has been modified so that Isabella County would continue to have a representative on the board. So really the only differences between the two resolutions regarding the composition of the board is that the original proposal sticks with the 2016 wording, which had language to encourage membership be comprised of both property owners and those who have business interests. The option B suggests that those strict numbers of those two groupings be eliminated based on the challenges of sometimes finding volunteers within those two distinct groups. So we've presented both resolutions for the makeup of the boards for your consideration, with the only change being in that area. And we recommend you approve the resolution supporting the change in funding and responsibilities as it was presented, and then choose one of the board composition resolutions.
Do I see a motion? Commissioner Ling.
I move to approve the resolution for restructuring funding and responsibility of downtown activities, and option B, resolution, I think that's the right one, option B, resolution reestablishing membership of the Tax Increment Finance Authority, Downtown Development Authority, and the Principal Shopping District Board.
Seconded by Commissioner Kulik. Commissioner Gillis.
Can we please have those separated? Those two motions, A and B?
So you want to vote on the resolution in support of the restructuring first and the
yes
membership makeup second. If the original motion...
So a division of the, please. Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, so I'm going to, can I take both those motions in seconds? Or do I have to do that again? Or can I take the motion in second for each of those?
You're saying Ling and Kulik, if you're both okay with.
I'm okay with it.
Supporting them separately.
All right. So on the resolution in support of the board restructuring, comments, questions? Commissioner Joseph.
I will be voting in support of the restructuring of the board.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments or questions, all those in...
I do have a question.
Oh, okay. Yes, Commissioner Gillis.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I couldn't believe that there was no actual conversation, but I was excited.
Moving right along. The makeup of the board, I know on the TIFA board, my concerns, because we're opening the board membership to people that are just business owners, not property owners. I would like to have some distinguishing language that would prefer property owners. If there were members that were more members wanted to be part, or more people put in their application to be members of the TIFA board, that we reserve the people that are paying the taxes and the special assessments for the PSD, that it would be property owners over business owners or business leasers.
Commissioner Kulik.
if people are running a business downtown and they have a triple net lease, the person paying the taxes and the special assessment is the store owner, not the building owner.
Commissioner Ling.
It could be a parliamentary inquiry. We divided the question, and so I'm assuming, although we didn't make it clear, I'm assuming that the first part is, that we're now going to vote on the first part, which just the restructuring and funding responsibilities, and then the second part of it is where we would be talking about who's going to be on the board, I
Membership
think.
of the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my.
So that option is what we'll be talking about next, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was.
I thought you said we were talking about A, which is board restructuring. Is that what you're talking about right now?
Yeah. Isn't the membership under that?
On the
12A.
agenda.
And I thought that's what
Board
you said a second
restructuring.
ago, was 12A. You just need to figure out what you're talking about right
Did
now,
we-
12A or 12B.
Okay. So
Oh,
on
I
the-
see what the
On the
problem is. In terms of
agenda,
what's on the
there A
agenda.
and B,
Yes.
and on the memo.
You have an
they're
A and a B
reversed.
and an option B.
So we are talking about the board restructuring, because we talked about voting
Okay,
on
that's fine.
A.
It doesn't make any difference to me which way we do it, as long as we all know that that's what we're voting on. We're voting on the board restructuring.
Right, I was going to make some clarification.
Right.
Once we,
Because I did make the motion, you know, the way it was in the agenda.
Right.
So, right.
Right.
That's fine.
So,
That's fine.
okay.
No problem.
So on the board restructuring, so Commissioner Gillis, your comments were absolutely timely. So
Where it says, page 4, it says, 3 members shall have interest in property located in the Tiffin Central Business District Development Area. I would like to preference, it be added, preference will be given to property owners.
Okay.
The motion was for option B, though, and option B doesn't have that wording in it, so we need to be looking at option B for what you would want the wording to be. Commissioner Gillis?
Sorry, a little off my game.
Yeah, I know. If you just look at paragraph C on page 63 of your agenda packet, I think that's where you might want to make your changes.
Okay. Can we do that? Yes.
So Commissioner Gillis, you are comfortable with option B as presented? Is that what I heard? Or you still wanted, are you asking to amend option B?
Option B says 5 members will either be property owners
Yes.
or members having an interest in the district.
Okay. Yes, and that would have some language that says preference to property owners.
When you're giving 5 to 4, that is a preference.
I guess I'm,
You want to add language that would say that.
right.
So you're asking.
Under 1,
1C.
C, yes.
So you are asking for an amendment to the motion to add language saying preference will be given to property owners.
Correct.
So I would need support for that amendment. I would need support for that amendment.
I'll second Commissioner Gillis's motion.
Okay. Is there discussion on that motion? Commissioner Kulik?
When the original language says that 5 are property owners, 4 are business or having an interest in property, you're already giving a preference to property owners. I think it's redundant to add the extra language.
Well, that's not the language.
Yeah, where are you at, Commissioner Kulik?
I don't know.
Because she's adding the language to 1C on page 63.
It's in the red line version. Where it says the Tifa board shall be.
Other comments or questions on this amendment? I will just say that I will not be supporting this amendment. I think that the people who are operating the businesses are on the front line of what's happening downtown and have the pulse, and sometimes property owners may live here and they may own property, but they may not be involved in what's happening downtown day to day or what the needs are of the downtown. So I don't believe I can support that motion. With that, all those in favor of the amendment to add language to give preference to property owners, say aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Joseph, were you?
Yeah, that was aye.
That was an aye. Okay, so Commissioner Gillis and Joseph were aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Nay. If you got that, clerk? Okay, so that amendment fails. So the motion for restructuring of the board is option B. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of option B, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Resolution in support of funding and responsibilities of the restructuring. If I could take Commissioner Ling's motion and Commissioner Kulik's second still on that, and then ask if there are any comments or questions. Commissioner Gillis.
My reservations are the $80,000 from the Economic Initiative Fund that we're giving to downtown. I know this is only for 1 year. Is that correct? We're not doing this for anymore. But I do believe that with the other services that we're trying to provide the city, and that we're trying to find funding for brush pickup, we're trying to find funding for sidewalks, snow removal, and we are always told we don't have the money, we don't have the staff. $80,000 would go a long way in providing those services to the citizens. And I don't believe it is taxpayers' responsibility to give initiatives and incentives for new business owners to come down into downtown. We offer a facade improvement grant. We also, and that's to be paid back when they sell the property. And then we also give them fire safety grant, which someone is just taking advantage of. I think that's $30,000 a piece to revert their top apartments to rental housings if they've let their rental licensing code lapse or they are trying to create one. We give a lot of money for downtown businesses to succeed already through what we've initiated and the $300,000 that is left in the TIFA to accommodate that. So I think the $80,000 from the Economic Initiative Fund should be placed elsewhere.
Any other comments or questions on the downtown funding and responsibilities restructuring resolution?
Was that a motion? I would like to amend that we take that $80,000 off of the Economic Initiative Fund for the funding for downtown.
Okay, so there is an amendment. Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second Lord Commissioner Gillis's amendment. I think it's a good conversation.
Okay. Would you like to, do you have any comments?
I have a question, I guess, for Nancy. So the last time we talked about this, we noted that they had a balance of $800,000 and about $500,000 of that was already committed to infrastructure projects. So what is the breakdown of what is left?
I didn't bring those details with me again this evening, but my recollection is the $800,000 was across all of the TIFAs. So within the downtown TIFA, you're right, about $500,000 of it is designated for future capital infrastructure. There's a piece that's designated for the fire safety grants that Commissioner Gillis just spoke about. And there was about $50-some thousand of unassigned, which this proposal recommends be used for capital infrastructure. So there would, all of the money that's in the current TIFA fund would be allocated toward projects. And so that's why the recommendation was made for the $80,000 allocation from the Economic Initiatives Fund, so that this board could have another program that would spur economic activity.
And if they find a use for that $80,000, that has to come to this board for approval, right?
Correct. If they create a new program, the new program comes to you.
Any other comments or questions on that amendment to remove the $80,000 from the Economic Initiative Board? Commissioner Gillis?
I just want to make a statement that businesses along Mission that have been there for 50 or 60 years, we don't provide them any economic initiative. We don't provide them any monies, grants to do their facades. We give a lot of our taxpayer money to downtown. And I think we need to do some of the things that were suggested in the Hyatt Palma for downtown businesses. One of the things that I have said before previously, they have to stay open past 5 o'clock to allow more people to come down. And I really don't think we need to provide money for people to move into downtown. I think downtown has its own merits and we shouldn't have to support new businesses in a monetary fashion.
Commissioner Kulik.
Nancy, if I may, Bill, we do have programs to help businesses along Mission Street. Could you outline a few of those quickly?
We used to have a facade program for Mission Street, and we did help some businesses with that program. We don't have that now because we turned some of that back to the downtown. We've had a number of programs where we've constructed new roads along Mission, which is a direct benefit to the businesses that are located on those streets because it creates a new street and provides a business address for those businesses and another way of folks to access those businesses and perhaps use the access to shop in those businesses. So that would be a couple of examples real quick off the top of my head.
And we also, in the tax capture district, we have incentives for closing driveways and for doing public improvements such as fencing.
Correct. Yep.
Any other comments or questions on the amendment to the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Nay. Nay. Oh, I'm sorry. That was an aye for me.
Okay. So Commissioner Gillis.
Saying nothing is automatically an aye, so
okay,
that was
thank
an
you.
So 1 to 6, so that motion fails. So the original motion on the floor is the resolution that's in the packet supporting the funding and responsibilities of the restructuring for the downtown boards. Are there any final comments or questions? Again, I feel like I'm wrapping up my tenure here on the commission and have to talk about everything. But obviously, downtown has kind of been a project of mine and something I've been very passionate about. I've been on the downtown development board in one form or another for almost 10 years and seen a number of ways to fund things, gone to a number of training programs about downtowns, looked at other downtowns, talked to people from other downtowns, and realized that while this resolution may not be the end-all solution to our downtown, it is a step in the right direction, and it's a step in progress in trying something different. And I know that for a community to be successful, your downtown has to be successful. And I know that for a downtown to be successful, the community has to buy into that. And sometimes that means supporting it and putting money and resources and energy into it. And I know that the amount of money and resources and energy and staff that we have that go into our downtown pales in comparison to a lot of other communities in their downtowns that we compare ourselves to regularly. And so I certainly will approve this restructuring and hope that the future commissions will continue to support and invest in their downtown and see the value in downtowns. So with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
So that motion passes 6-1 with Commissioner Gillis voting against it. All right, item number 13, something very exciting. We are considering approval this evening of a memorandum of agreement with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe regarding the former Mount Pleasant Center property.
As you know, when the city made the decision to purchase the Mount Pleasant Center property in 2011, it was understood that the success of it would be based on a cooperative relationship with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe because they also purchased part of the property. And over the ensuing 7 years, we've had numerous instances of working cooperatively together with the tribe, and this proposed agreement tonight is another instance of that. Earlier this year, the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe was successful in obtaining placement of the land on the National Register of Historic Places. And initially, we had concern about the impact such a designation may have on the future development of our city-owned land. And we were assured by both tribal representatives and historic preservation officers that that listing does not interfere with, and I'm quoting, does not interfere with the property owner's rights to alter, manage, or dispose of property, does not mean that limitations will be placed on the property, and will not attach restrictive covenants to the properties or seek to acquire them. So we were still having conversations with tribal representatives, though, because they've been clear about their desire to preserve archaeological resources, and city representatives have been clear about our desire for development of the land for increased tax base or employment. Conversely, the tribal representatives have indicated their intent to not interfere with the city's development, and we've indicated our intent to preserve archaeological resources that are found. So what this agreement does is it documents those mutual agreements with each other, and in summary, it indicates that the city would commit to completing an initial phase 1 archaeological survey on portions of the land that have not previously been surveyed or greatly disturbed. There's mutual commitments about how artifacts, burial sites, or human remains will be addressed if they're found during that survey. Based on that survey and future archaeological work, the land would be categorized into areas that may need further research or should be preserved due to their significance, or areas that may be cleared from archaeological significance and can move forward with development. It includes a provision that in those areas that are preserved, there's a probability that we may consider conveying ownership of those lands to the tribe if they're deemed significant to the Mount Pleasant Industrial Boarding School area. It also indicates that if federal funds are used on the property, that any obligations that the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer has will be done in a timely review of those matters. And if either party plans to develop their portions of their land, they will give 30 days to the neighboring property owner to comment on it, and each property owner will fully consider but not be committed to those comments. And the term of the agreement is 15 years. We believe in these numerous conversations we've had with tribal representatives that implementation of this agreement and the archaeological work related to it will provide future purchasers of our property the assurances they need to move forward with development, knowing that they're not likely to run into archaeological resource issues to have to deal with. So it outlines the commitments of both parties, and we believe once the work is done, will make it easier for us to be able to market our land for future development. The Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribal Council has not taken formal action on this agreement. They're scheduled to do so on Wednesday, but we're recommending you authorize the mayor and clerk to sign it, assuming that there's mutual agreement by both parties.
I see a motion from Commissioner Joseph, seconded by Commissioner Kulik. Commissioner Kulik.
I'll be supporting this motion. I think this is an example that we've been working on this issue since 2011. I don't, Nancy might know off the top of her head, but probably not how many revisions of this memorandum of understanding that we've gone through to get it right. That's all I was asking for earlier with the Citizens Advisory Board, that we get it right, that we don't rush to judgment.
Commissioner Ling.
This has been a long time coming, and I want to be able to publicly thank the mayor and the city manager, and the chief, Echdal, and Eric Rodriguez, who works with the tribe. They have really put in an enormous amount of effort. I know that this has been a real goal of the mayor to get this done before this year, and she's worked very, very hard to achieve that, and the tribe has worked very, very hard with the city in order to achieve that. So thank you very much for getting us here.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Commissioner Joseph.
I would just echo my fellow commissioners that this is an agreement that I think comes from a respect for our neighbors and also a desire to really for both of us to accomplish our goals. And it's a really big first step to the continued relationship that we have with the Saginaw Chippewa tribe and what in the future of this property. So I really look forward to the continuation of this project. I know that it's a hot topic every time the city commission is up for election, and now we maybe have a couple more answers to give you. But I hopefully that the transition is smooth, and that that on Wednesday the tribe will also approve this agreement and find that they find it agreeable as well.
Other comments or questions? Right. So yes, this is one of those things, again, it came up as an election topic that the city wasn't doing anything about the Mount Pleasant Center property. And it wasn't that we weren't doing something about the Mount Pleasant Center property. Every time I interacted with the city manager, we were discussing this memorandum of agreement. But this was a long time coming, so long that I have to really give thanks to our former mayor, Commissioner Holton, who set up and was able to kind of reach across the table to the chief at the time, Frank Coultier, and set up a luncheon that Commissioner Ling was at and I was at, as well as Commissioner Holton, and there were a couple of tribal council members, and we sat down and kind of talked about our fears and concerns and hopes and dreams, and kind of laid the groundwork for this memorandum to take place. And those conversations, that dialogue, that ability to work together to provide mutual good for something that is great for not only the city and tribal council, but this community at large. And I'm really proud of this work. I'm really proud that we were able to bring it to a resolution. I feel fairly confident that the tribal council will be in support of this on Wednesday, and hope that the chief and I can have a, opportunity to sign this together, because I think it really brings the embodiment of what Mount Pleasant is, meeting together to accomplish similar goals. And I'm really excited about that. And I want to thank the city manager, who really put in a lot of time and energy and a lot of phone calls and a lot of work on the numerous copies of the agreements. I saw numerous copies, and what I saw was only a small portion of the number of times and revisions that we had revisions made to it. So thank you. With that, all those in favor of supporting this memorandum of agreement with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. This is a long night full of big items. Item number 14J is a resolution regarding amended rates for the refuse bag and tag. So I'll ask the city manager to go over that item.
Yes, we've recommended the rates that will cover the full cost of the new contract that we have with Republic Services for the bag tag rates. The bag tag rates were last adjusted in 2016 when we lowered the bag rate and increased the tag rate to more accurately reflect the volume that happens when those two options are used for trash removal. I couldn't think of the word options. Prior to that, the bag tag rate had not been adjusted since 2011, so we've recommended the rates as presented in the resolution.
I see a motion from Commissioner Kulik, seconded by Vice Mayor Maddie. Commissioner Kulik.
I'm not supposed to really speak against my motion, but the amount of increase is more than I would prefer, but we only received the one bid for the trash services, and the costs are what the costs are. And unless we want to subsidize this with general fund money, which I do not want to do because it's always the question, well, what do you want to eliminate if you want to subsidize trash? So I will be supporting the bag tag price increase.
Commissioner Lang.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, so I'm just going to say I took it off because we had a long discussion of this at the work session. I understand the need to have the increase. I would have preferred that we phase it in over 3 years. I know there's no support for that, so I'm not going to even make the motion unless if someone else wants to make it. I just can't vote for that size increase in 1 year. I would have preferred that we phased it in, and so I'm going to vote no.
Other comments and questions?
I have a point of clarification.
If I could, Commissioner Gillis, raise your hand just moments before you did. So,
I think I have a privileged motion. I thought we had two bids actually that came forth.
You did have 2 bids, and Republic was the low bid.
Right. Okay.
Commissioner Gillis.
I am not comfortable with raising the bags and tags fee. I think that the service should be actually provided by the city, but that's a whole nother ball of wax. And I also believe that it is in our best interest to keep these rates low enough that people participate, not only in getting their garbage out, but and not taking it outside the city limits to burn at maybe their neighbors or their fathers or their cousins. And I think it is high enough when you're buying 10 tags to be close to $22 when you're buying them. So I do believe this is a worthy cause to subsidize some of our general fund money to keep the rates at a lower rate for our citizens. We find we're subsidizing so many other different things along with downtown that the small amount of money that would be used as a general public good or service to keep those rates at that lower rate would serve our community.
Other comments or questions? I will be supporting this, although I do have sympathy with the idea that this cost will increase pretty dramatically. You know, it's unfortunate of the climate that we live in, and I encourage staff to sell 1 ticket and 1 trash bag at a time. Green Tree Cooperative sells them 1 at a time, and you know, maybe we can work with our other vendors to sell them in 1s or 2s so that it is a smaller price for each family's budget for that week or month. So the families who are living paycheck to paycheck can still afford these trash tags rather than needing to buy 10, which is probably, you know, 2 months worth of trash tags at a time. And so, but what this does is it rewards those who are using composting techniques and recycling techniques as opposed to making a lot of trash and throwing things in their garbage. And in order to actually be environmentally sustainable, we need to be recycling, which our recycling rates are very low, and we need to be utilizing composting, even if it's home composting, or maybe someday the city will decide to take up the task of doing community-wide composting, which has been proven to reduce trash rates enormously. So unfortunately, this is what has to happen at this point in order to make everything work. So.
Mayor, if I may, thank you for the reminder. We did commit during the work session discussion that at City Hall, we will sell them in quantities less than 10, and you're correct, Green Tree does. We're not sure we will have success in getting the other retailers to do that, but certainly at City Hall, we will sell them in lesser quantities, whatever quantity the purchaser would like to buy them in.
Thank you. We can't make retailers do anything, but we can always ask the question.
Correct.
So.
And I just want to let the public know those bags will be raised from $2.55 or $3.15 for a tag. $2.55 for if you use your own container, $3.15 for a tag, or $2.55 if you use a bag, a purchased bag, $3.15 if you put it on your own container.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
So both Commissioner Gillis and Ling were opposed. That motion passes. Item number K, residential curbside recycling pickup.
And again, this item is, this is the proposed rate we would need on a monthly basis to cover the full cost of the curbside pickup that is done for residential units and some of our multifamily units. So we're recommending that the monthly fee be increased to $2.50 to cover the full cost of that pickup.
I see a motion from Commissioner Kulik, seconded by Commissioner Joseph. Comments or questions? Commissioner Kulik.
We've been fortunate that prior to the trade war that there had been a decent market for recyclables. I keep reading that due to the trade war and the slowing of the economy in China, that recycle items are piling up and there's no market for them. We should be happy that we've been able to hold the line as long as we could.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Gillis.
This is another concern I have because people are being charged $2.50 on their water bill, even if they don't ever put a recycling bin out. We have discussions in the snow sidewalk removal of charging people or putting it on our tax bill, and there was some discussion of people that don't have a sidewalk are going to be subsidizing people, those with a sidewalk. And this is somewhat what's happening. All of us are being charged this, but not all of us use this. I do, and I use the city water to rinse everything out, so my water bill goes up because I recycle, because I'm a good steward of Mother Earth. But I don't think we should be charging people even a recycling fee. I think the city should provide that service because there are people that are being charged that fee that never put out a recycling bin. So I just think that we should be able to accommodate some of these services for our citizens and lower the water bill so when I'm washing out all my recyclables, I don't get charged for water.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? With that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
6-1 on that vote. Item number 15, consider appointments to various city boards and commissions as recommended by the Appointments Committee. I will ask that the chair of the Appointments Committee go through that item for us.
Okay, the Appointments Committee met and we have made about 2/3 of the appointments that need to be made before the end of the year. And unless my intent is to make a motion and then just read through all of them. After I've done that, if somebody wanted to ask that one be divided out, we could do it that way. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to very quickly read through the ones that we have. So I move, based on the unanimous recommendation of the Appointments Committee, that we make the following appointments or reappointments. The reappointments are all the ones with the asterisks. To the Airport Advisory Board, Sam Staples and Catherine Tillman, to terms ending December 31st, 2021. To the Board of Review, Chris Cantrell, Catherine Tillman, and James Kredler.
There's no stars by anything.
Right.
There's two underlines.
I'm going to...
Are you reading from your memo or?
Yeah, I was reading from my memo. I'm going to go back and look at, yeah. Here, let me do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120 That isn't really the concern. Okay, yeah, I'm reading from mine.
Okay.
Yeah. Was it different than the one that you were looking at?
I don't think so. I was just going to clarify, on your memo, the reappointments are indicated with an asterisk.
Right.
And the new appointments have no indication next to them.
Right, that's right.
So Mr. Cridler is the only new appointment on the Board of Review.
That's correct. Okay, that wasn't the concern. Yes, that was correct. Okay, Building, Fire, and Sanitary Sewer Board of Appeals, Larry Summer and Joe Fleming, 2 terms ending December 31st, 2021. Those are both reappointments. The City CMU Student Liaison Committee, Rick Routman, to a term ending December 31st, 2021. That is a reappointment. The Caldwell and Recreation Commission, Tim Cascarelli, for a partial term ending December 31st, 2020. That's a new appointment. And the Dog Park Advisory Board, Ann Heineman, to a reappointment to a term ending December 31st, 2021. The Downtown Development Authority, Tim Drisniak and Tom Crapel, to terms ending December 31st, 2022. Those are both reappointments. To the Economic Development Corporation and Brownfield Authority, Josh Aggerty, for a term ending December 31st, 2024. That's a reappointment. The Historic District Commission, Gary Mark and Julie Taylor, to terms ending December 31st, 2021. Gary Mark is a new appointment. Julie Taylor is a reappointment. The Isabella County Transportation Commitment, Rick Faulkner, to a term ending December 31st, 2021. That's a reappointment. The Local Officers Compensation Commission, John Joslin, to a term ending December 31st, 2025, a reappointment. The Parks and Recreation Commission, Mary Alzagar, to a term ending December 31st, 2021, a reappointment. To the Planning Commission, 3 reappointments: Bill Daly, Leslie Honig, and Michael Kostreva, to terms ending December 31st, 2021. Zoning Board of Appeals, a reappointment of Laura Razinen to a term ending December 31st, 2021.
Second, I see a motion from Commissioner Kulik, seconded by Commissioner Joseph.
I think Commissioner
Ling made the motion.
Oh, you made, oh, she did make the motion. Okay, so Commissioner Ling made the motion, Commissioner Kulik supported.
Kulik.
Okay, comments or questions?
Just really thankful that we have that many people who want to serve on our boards.
Right. A big list every year. Seeing no other comments or questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Item number 16, consider a closed session pursuant to subsection 8A of the Open Meetings Act to consider a periodic personal evaluation. I see a motion from Commissioner Kulik. I need seconded by Vice Mayor Maddie.
Roll call.
Yeah, we don't usually ask for comments and questions on this, so seeing,
But if you want some.
right, I will ask the clerk to make a roll call vote.
Commissioner Ling,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Joseph,
Yes.
Commissioner Kulik,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Maddie,
Yes.
Mayor Lentz.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. On to announcements of city-related issues and new business. Commissioner Kulik.
Since we were blessed by Mother Nature again, would it be possible for the commission to consider in the spring of 2019 to have a leaf pickup? I don't think we can pick up the leaves buried under all the snow. Is that something we can discuss? And because we're saving a bunch of money because the last leaf pickup was impacted also.
Well, actually, we fully intend to go out this week and pick up the leaves that are in the streets. When the guys plowed today, they did their best to go around the piles that are there, and so they're going to go out the rest of this week and do their best to pick up what they can, and also large clumps that may have gotten put back in the yards they will try to do. So we're hoping to get as much as we can this week. It kind of depends on what the weather does in the next couple days, but our goal is to still do the pickup this week if possible. Certainly, if you wanted to consider a pickup in the spring, we could look at that. We'd have to get you some cost estimates and some numbers to amend the budget, but we could look at that if this week doesn't go well.
Okay. And the other thing is, I believe starting December 1st, you can no longer park on the streets overnight. Is that correct? So people that have thinking you've been getting away with something by leaving your car out on the street overnight, starting December 1st, you may find some envelopes under there that remind you that that's in opposition of city ordinance.
Commissioner Joseph.
I just wanted to remind the public that on Saturday, December 1st, we're having our parade and there will be a fireworks show.
Other comments and questions? Commissioner Ling?
I just wanted to mention, as Commissioner Joseph said, we're lucky to have so many people willing to serve so many positions on our boards and commissions. Unfortunately, we are still short of few, and I just wanted to mention what they were, so that if there are people between now and next week, when we're going to have to look at filling the rest of them, might be interested in them, that they can still submit applications. And the three boards that we have no applications for at this point are the Economic Development Corporation and Brownfield Authority, that deals with economic development in the city, the Isabella County Material Recovery Facility Governing Board, what most people refer to as the Recycling Center Board, we have an opening on, and then the Local Development Finance Authority that works with the Smart Zone on campus.
Won't we have a Citizen Advisory Board nominee as well?
Well, then that will be coming, right? We will have to fill the positions on the Citizens Advisory Board. We'll have to develop that application process, but yes, we will have those also.
Vice Mayor Mattei.
So going back a moment, in my comment or statement regarding my abstention or recusal regarding the city's prosecutorial services, I inadvertently omitted and added to the name of the law firm. So I regret that error, and my apologies to and for omitting Ms. O'Neill from that law firm. So I regret that mistake.
Commissioner Gillis.
Could Ms. Ridley give us an idea of if our neighbor puts leaves out in the street after the last street sweeping, what avenues we have to make sure those leaves don't end up in their yards?
If that happens, I would suggest a call to code enforcement, and they can follow up with the neighbor.
And then they will be asked to remove it or pick it up.
Mr. Labsinger will take care of that. Well, are you official yet? Okay.
Oh.
And that is a good thing to remember. We only go through the city once, and so once we start going through, hopefully tomorrow, knock on wood, if we've been through your neighborhood and picked up your neighbor's leaves, it does not do any good to put your leaves out because we won't be back through any neighborhoods. We just go through once. So that's a good opportunity to remind the public that's watching that it's just a one-time swipe through.
Commissioner Joseph.
On that note, if you do have leaves left over, you can bring them to the MRF.
Yeah. Or put them in your compost pile.
$1 a bag.
With that, so adding on to Commissioner Joseph's comments about this weekend, on Friday and Saturday, we have a host of different events for the downtown Christmas celebration, the community Christmas celebration held in downtown Mount Pleasant. We have a tree lighting ceremony on Friday evening. There is a lighted Christmas parade, and thanks to the Bridenstine family of the Bird Bar and Grill, we are able to have a fireworks celebration this year, which is very, very exciting. So thank you to the Bridenstine family for that contribution. That was really wonderful. I also really would like to thank all of the community partners for our new branding. We unleashed our community branding, Meet Here. And so this is kind of the conversation around this community being not only a great place to meet centrally in the state of Michigan, but that this really is a small community where we get together, have conversations, we know our neighbors, we listen to each other, and finishing this branding was the last step in our redevelopment ready certification, so I believe the city planner is probably getting ready to submit our final application to the state in that process. And so thank you to the hard work from everyone. I know that not everyone is happy with our branding results. I don't think people are ever 100% happy with anything that comes through. That's the qualms of local government, right? You're never going to make everybody happy, but having something is far better than having nothing, and the more community input we get on items, the better they are. So if you are unhappy about things like what our community branding is, I encourage you to be an active participant in local government and be an active participant in all of the town forums and public input opportunities that we have in this community. So with that, I will open up the last opportunity for public comment this evening. So if you have any comments on anything city-related on the agenda or not on the agenda, this would be your opportunity to come forward. We ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes and state your name and address. Seeing nobody that wishes to come forth, I will close this opportunity for public comment, and we will recess upstairs to conference room A for a work session on the operating budget as well as a closed session.